thank you for pressing start on episode 5 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcast. Today we have a couple of secret games to review, followed by a cooperative look at this episode's featured game, Bugsnax. I'm Bopo, and joining me is my player 2, DiscoCola. How are you doing, Disco?
I'm doing great, Bopo. I'm ready to be talking about Bugsnax.
Yes, this is a game we've been talking about amongst ourselves for a while, but neither of us had touched it before this last few weeks in preparation for episode 5 of Underplayed. So really excited to talk about this one with you. And it is episode 5 of our show. I feel like that's kind of a good mini milestone almost. We're halfway to double digits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
So we were going to talk a little bit about structure. So I'll let you start off with that if that's okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm segueing into. We've talked a lot off recording about how we want to structure this show. And we kind of came up with a format to how we could structure this in a season style with our podcast. So we have a collection of games that we've been looking at for our featured cooperative review. The headlining games, the ones that we're really taking an in-depth look at the end of each episode. We have a good 10 of those that we have pretty much cemented in. We're going to review for the show. We've already done 4 of them up to this point, technically 5 because we did a 2-parter in episode 1, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's actually 11 games, but 10 episodes we want to do in what we call season 1 of Underplayed. So this would be kind of the halfway mark for season 1. And how it would work is we will do roughly 2 weeks of playing our secret games and the featured games in between each recording. That's mainly the plan we've stuck to up to this point. I want to keep doing that at that rate. And when we get to the end of the season, that is a great place for us to kind of take a pulse check on what we've played so far and maybe have a little bit of reflection, do an extra recording where we take a look at that first collection of 10 games that we've played and maybe do a little bit of ranking too, like what our favorite games are, maybe some common threads and themes that we saw across games. It's kind of an excuse for us to, do a little bookmark in between these long stretches of recording these episodes. And I think it would also give us a good natural point to maybe take a longer break before season 2.
Yeah. And that gives us also the opportunity to play some of these longer indie games in between seasons, which we've sort of already committed ourselves to doing, I think.
Yes. So in the future, we do want to feature reviews of longer games. I don't know if we should mention some of those now, but some of the games we're thinking about for like season 2, I do want some really nice time with those, not just 2 weeks. So having that longer break between seasons would really help us accomplish an accurate review of those titles. So that's what you can look forward to if you've been with us so far. If you're just jumping into episode 5, we thank you very much for joining. And that's what our plan is going to be. So here's Bugsnax. It's going to be our episode 5 featured review. We'll have 5 more episodes after this. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah.
Yep. And then the number 11 review.
Yeah. So number 11 wrap-up show. I'm not sure what we'll call that, but a reflection of some kind. I'm looking forward to that a lot. So let's start with our first segment, Secret Games.
The secret games. Secret games. That you're playing. Secret games. The secret games.
Secret Games is our segment where we each review one indie game we've been playing in secret since our last episode. We do not discuss our picks in advance, and we do everything we can to keep them a surprise for this very moment. Any indie game can be chosen as long as it hasn't been reviewed on the podcast before. We will start with you, DiscoCola. Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your secret game for episode 5 of Underplayed.
All right. You already know it's coming. My secret game is Watum.
No, it is not.
No, it is
not.
not.
No, it's not. You've done that joke 3 times now.
And I'm going to do it.
You're going to keep doing it.
Several more. Just kidding. My secret game for this episode is actually The Big Con.
The Big Con.
The Big Con.
I don't know what this is.
So I just sent you a little trailer.
What?
And I'm pretty sure I shared this with you in the past.
Oh, I'm looking at the thumbnail. I instantly recognize this thumbnail, this art style.
So The Big Con is, as far as I can tell, the debut game by Mighty Yell Studios. It joins Bugsnax in being a game that has a licensed song in their trailer. And in this case, it is done by world-renowned a cappella group Rockapella. So first, before we go any further, pause this episode, go listen to that song, and you'll hear exactly what's been in my head all night leading up to this recording. So as the song suggests, welcome back, by the way, as the song suggests, the game follows 17-year-old Allie as she sets off across the country with Ted. And Ted's kind of a pretty boy con man, and their goal is to save her mother's video store from a group of loan sharks. Linda, Allie's mom, tries to hide this from Allie, as many struggling single parents would do, but Allie's a little bit more into it than her mom gives her credit for. So early in the game, you learn Allie's mom, Linda, is in debt to Ricky and his henchmen to the tune of about close to $100,000. So that's a pretty substantial sum for a 17-year-old. So how is Allie supposed to even get close to this amount? Well, pretty much the only way someone can attain that kind of money. Shortcuts, lying, and mostly at the expense of the innocent. You meet Ted, whom teaches you how to pickpocket, and you must be a natural at it because this manifests in a little minigame that isn't really all that challenging. Now, don't get me wrong, pickpocketing is the most tedious part of the game, so a mostly unchallenging minigame is more than welcome. Hell, even the game sort of acknowledges this in the options menu with the option to turn off that minigame altogether.
Oh, I like that.
So you can just instantly pickpocket people to speed it up.
And pickpocketing you can see in the trailer. I think I saw a quick moment of that happening.
Yeah, that's pretty much it as far as gameplay mechanics. So all of that being covered, really where this game excels is character building. Talking to an NPC that strives for peace and quiet gives you options to press his buttons to the limit, or you can leave him alone. So you really feel how Allie is not quite a stereotypical extrovert, but is adaptable to many different social situations, and it kind of feels natural. Yeah, you learn that her mother has worked hard to make sure Allie has it better than she had it growing up. You also learn very quickly that Ted is withholding. There's a lot of subtleties in his language that suggest that. Even unimportant NPCs kind of leave you wanting more context with their bubble dialogue and their flavor voice acting lines. One of the other things I love about this game, playing it blind, is that playing through the first level of the game can sort of try to set your expectations for how forgiving the rest of the game can be. You can make maybe $300 tops in the first zone. That really sets the stage for a good morality test throughout the rest of the game. In levels 2 and 3, there's opportunities to steal from children. So if you think about making $300 in the first level versus the need to make $97,000, you kind of have to. It makes you really think about those moral decisions. There are a couple areas of the game that fall short. Your objectives are given to you in the form of a journal, but it can sometimes be cryptic and you don't totally know what to keep an eye out for. And sometimes the areas are a little bit too big for your movement speed. You have one movement speed, and that's the size of the areas can kind of hold you back a little bit without more direct objectives. This is also compounded by some of the technical glitches in the game itself, among a couple of other odd visual glitches. I had more than one occasion where certain important game guiding triggers just didn't fire. So I was left looking these up on guides. And at this point, this game's pretty new, so there's not a lot of guides out there. So yeah, in the end, I'm going to give The Big Con 7.5 out of 10. I was really excited about this game, and I've been looking forward to the chance to play it since I saw the Rockapella trailer. The game is not bad by any means, and I think it takes strong dialogue writing of games like Night in the Woods and adds more enjoyable gameplay to it. I think it could have benefited from a little bit more time in the oven, though. I couldn't quite find which patch I was playing on, which version of the game. But I'd expect some of those technical glitches to get resolved in future patches. At the time of this recording, the Big Con is available on Steam and Xbox. A personal Twitter interaction I had with Mighty Yell suggests that a Switch version's in the pipeline, and I hope PlayStation soon after.
This does look like a Switch game. Like it just has that aesthetic.
Yeah,
to be a Switch indie.
I had a buddy ask for a Switch suggestion. I was like, "Oh, the Big Con," and that's what actually initiated this conversation on Twitter. I was like, "Oh, wait, it's actually
not on
there."
Switch. I just used my intuition to assume that it was on Switch.
And they were like, "We hear you." Yeah.
That is totally the kind of game, though, that I could see being announced during a Nintendo Direct, catch the Big Con when it hits the Nintendo eShop later today.
That's weirdly what the trailers are kind of already like anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good game. I would love to play a console version. I just don't have access to an Xbox, and I wonder if maybe it just performs a little bit better on a console.
Sure. So let me ask you this. You're trying to get all this money. You're trying to build up this money to pay back this debt.
Mm-hmm.
Does the game end when you achieve the $100,000 worth of stuff attained, or are you graded on how well you do these stages? Can you go back and redo them?
So this game is more, it's very linear, and it's more focused on a narrative rather than goals.
Okay. So your outcome for how things play out might change depending on how well you grift, for instance.
Yeah,
in a way.
That's potential. I only had the chance to, access one ending. I don't know if there are multiple endings. There's also a lot of different dialogue options that I failed to mention before. I don't know how those change certain outcomes because you only get one chance at those dialogue options too.
Okay. Well, it sounds like a stylistic adventure game. If you like doing crimes, this game's probably for you. It looks interesting. It certainly has interesting characters. The color palette is eye-popping.
Colors and character designs and 90s references.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is the Big Con. That is DiscoCola's secret game. My secret game is a game I had played before. I played it about 5 years ago, and I played it on PC at the time. I played it on PlayStation for my replay. This is my first revisit of a game I had played for Underplayed. So my secret game is Jazzpunk.
Yo!
Now, usually when I read my premise of what's going on with a particular game, I like to write that out. I'm going to read the synopsis that you can see on Steam because I think it's really good, and I don't think I could write anything as good as this. Jazzpunk is a 2014 comedy adventure set in an alternate reality Cold War world plagued with corporate espionage, cybercrime, and sentient martinis. Gameplay is inspired by spoof comedy films and cartoons of yesteryear with a focus on weird gadgets, exotic locales, and open-world style exploration. So in this game, you control a silent protagonist named Polyblank, and everything happens in first person. I sent you the gameplay trailer just now, so you're taking a look at probably all the wacky stuff that goes on. It's an alternate reality where Japan took control of North America. Polyblank works for a spy agency called Nexus 6, and Nexus 6 is led by a character called the Director. So the Director is giving you some kind of mission in each stage, and you're tasked with exploring all these locations inspired by film noir movies, by spy thrillers. But the twist with this game is that Jazzpunk is a title that really does not take itself seriously whatsoever. The story in this game is completely ludicrous, but manages to walk this fine line between being absurd and completely deadpan. And it all adds up to this game that has this comedic energy that's really unlike any other game I've played before. So to describe Jazzpunk further with any kind of accuracy would be almost futile unless I sat you down and had you watch me play the game. But since this is an audio podcast, I will give some examples now of some ridiculous things that happen in this game. So here's a list of 6 things I wrote down, 6 of many examples of things that happen that I think paint a picture of how strange this game is. In one of the early stages, you're tasked with invading a Soviet consulate, but the way you get in is to go inside the consulate lobby and change the time on the clock in the building to distract the construction workers outside into thinking it's lunchtime. And then you ride their suspended scaffolding up to the top where there's an open window. So then you could pass by a certain bystander on a bridge, which causes him to fall and erupt in a Wilhelm scream for no reason in that same stage. There's another stage where you need to escape from enemy thugs, but you can just walk into them and they knock over like bowling pins, and it's accompanied by a sound effect of a bowling ball actually hitting pins. And then it ramps up from there. One goon will robotically say like, bowling joke. And another goon is literally a bowling pin standing alongside his fellow goons at the end of the stage. You can throw a microwaved pigeon pie into a thug's face, and without emotion, he says, I have 4th-degree burns all over my face. There's a stage with a beach, and you can interact with a harmless turtle sitting on the beach, and your character will just throw a red bandana, a pizza slice, and size onto the turtle as a random TMNT reference. And then the last example I have here, in one stage, a woman asks you to swap flies inside her vase shop, and instead of the flies, you can choose to smash all of her vases, some of which have brains inside of them, and if you smash them all, you're greeted with a message that says, insurance collected. So I could go on and on and on with those kinds of examples about how absurd this game is. It is a short experience with lots of layers and secrets to uncover. Almost none of it makes sense, but I think it's a valuable experience because it creates humor out of nowhere really well. It has this incredible sense of self-awareness. Comedy is such a hard thing to write, and it's exponentially more difficult to implement into a game where the player can kind of go at their own speed and explore things in their own style, right? Everybody brings their own personality to how they walk around in stages where you can kind of just go in any direction. And I think Jazzpunk makes its comedy work because every part of it is eccentric. From top to bottom, everything you interact with, everything you look at, you're going to be met with something bizarre or offbeat. I think my memory of this game from 5 or so years ago was a tad rose-colored because I remember this kind of experience being so fresh and unprecedented to me around then. But since then, I have explored more indie games that attempt a lot of these kind of eccentric ideas and comedic flourishes. So the luster of what makes this game special has worn off a little bit on my replay, but it still commits so fully to being as strange and off the wall as possible. And I think Jazzpunk is an excellent example of the kinds of energy indie games can possess that AAA games can never even hope to touch. So for those reasons, my score for this game is 8 out of 10. I think it's an experience that's unlike a lot of other things out there. And if you like shorter experiences, you can sit down and play this whole thing in 1 or 2 sittings too. So that's nice.
I think this is, first of all, I think this is the first episode where your score is higher than mine on our secret games.
I think so, yeah.
I think you tend to be a little bit more critical, or maybe I'm just a little bit lighter.
I think we both fairly point out criticisms and praises. I think you're just more generous with the actual score.
That could be.
The number.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah.
So, first of all, watching this trailer, I noticed that that there's a certain pastel, a certain brightness to all of the games that we're playing today. So that's a fun little connection. Looking at it, it doesn't remind me of anything specific. Kind of Roblox, I guess, kind of, but we don't need to talk about Roblox. But hearing you describe some of these like comedic interactions, I'm sort of thinking like of a cartoon show, specifically Ed, Edd n Eddy.
Yeah.
Like I sat down about probably a year ago at this point and sort of like overanalyzed Ed, Edd n Eddy and what makes Ed, Edd n Eddy funny and kind of timeless. And a lot of the things that you described are what I noticed about that show and what makes that funny. And a lot of it having to do with like sound design and sort of that deadpan delivery when you're not expecting it.
Yeah. I've seen so many games that do something that's silly and ridiculous, but not so many that walk this line between being absurd and also just being kind of self-serious at the same time and just matter of fact with how ridiculous it is. I think this game was originally designed in kind of an inverse way where a lot of it was serious. Like, yes, it was an alternate take on what happened during the Cold War, but all the comedic stuff were just kind of tiny flourishes that they sprinkled throughout. And I think over time, the developers really fell in love with those flourishes they were doing, and they really wanted to make that a main attraction to this experience. So they kept adding more jokes, kept adding more absurd things, more non sequitur statements, and monotone deliveries of these really ridiculous lines of dialogue. And it just kind of tipped the other direction where it's like, no, we're making a really silly game that's very lightly based on a lot of the genres of movies that we really like. There's a espionage, spy thriller undertone to a lot of this. There's that DNA that's underneath everything and informing how all of the stages are presented, which I think is really cool. But yeah, at the heart of this, it is just a goofy experience. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's Jazzpunk. That's my secret game. It was developed by Necrophone Games. It is playable on Windows, Mac, Linux, and PS4. Let's move on to our featured review of Bugsnax. Bugsnax is a 2020 first-person adventure game where you are invited to the mysterious Snaktooth Island by an explorer named Lisbert Megafig. Littered across the island are Bugsnax, which are half insect, half snack creatures that cause transformations to those who eat them. It's soon discovered that Lisbert and her grumpus companions are scattered, and it's up to the player to find them, discover the details of their lives, and catch Bugsnax using a variety of tools and strategies. This game was developed by Young Horses. So Disco, I want to go back to mid-2020. The world knows about the PlayStation 5.
Mm-hmm.
There is a very momentous occasion. There is a PlayStation 5 preview event that Sony puts on, right? This is a stream that many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are watching. And it is the first time we see games like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Spider-Man Miles Morales. A lot of important reveals, but also sprinkled throughout this presentation are some obscure titles like Bugsnax, right? I think it was easy at first to write this game off as maybe a casual game, maybe something more child-oriented. So it looks like they're kind of appealing to all age ranges with the new console, right? And while I certainly think this game can be played by kids, I think it's a little surprising once you dive in and you spend like 10 to 15 hours with this game. So I'd like you to just save your overall thoughts for just a moment. And I want to know what your reaction to this game was like when you first learned about it.
I was so stoked. I remember the exact showcase that you're talking about. And I remember that Bugsnax was the one that I was the most excited about out of the whole showcase.
Expound on that.
I just thought it looked really fun. It seemed like this whole showcase was mostly like dark, gritty, AAA stuff that, if anything, this podcast is a monument to how much I try to stay away from that kind of stuff because I don't enjoy it. I was stoked. I thought it looked awesome. It felt like I was going to be able to play something like a Spyro or something like a Banjo-Kazooie or a ukulele or something. But you got to catch these cute little bugs. And it had that song, dude.
It had the Bugsnax song.
The Bugsnax
That sealed
song.
it away for you.
It really did.
Okay.
So at this point in the podcast, if you've never heard Caro Benito's It's Bugsnax, pause real quick.
Yep. Another song you have to pause the podcast for.
It's worth it. Just do it.
Just do it. It's a great song. It's gets stuck in your head. It's an earworm.
We just listened to it like half an hour ago.
Yes, we did.
The both of us. It's so good.
Yeah. My initial reaction to this game was just feeling that this is bizarre. This is just a bizarre thing because right in the trailer, I think we see Filbo. We see the character of Filbo, who's a Grumpus, and we should explain the Grumpuses are these bipedal creatures who kind of most of them have like oval shaped bodies. They're covered in fur.
Yeah, kind of think of like a Sesame Street
That's a great
kind
comparison.
of a character.
Yes, that very much like those, covered in fur. All of them can have like, different height and different colors of fur. They all have different personalities. So those are essentially the, humans of this world. They talk and everything. But we see Filbo, who is one of the main grumpuses in the game, and I think he eats a strawberry, a
Strawbee.
a strawbee.
Yep.
And we see one of his limbs start to turn into a strawberry. And I'm going, what is this game? What is going on here? Because I don't know that we got a strong indication that this was going to be a game where you're essentially like hunting Pokemon, right? Where you're catching all these things and you're figuring out these strategies for how they work. So I had confusion and I just felt like, oh, this is bizarre. Didn't totally write it off, but thought this seems kind of like childlike and casual and I don't know what's going on. I have to see more. I can't make a final decision on what this is. So now that you've played the game, you've spent a good amount of time with it. You've gotten the platinum in this game on PlayStation 4. Let me know, what are your overall thoughts on this game?
So this game is not quite the just very base level child appeal that I kind of hoped it would be, but I'm certainly not upset by that. This game managed to really surprise me. It managed to frustrate me a little bit more than I thought it would. I'm not like always big on first person 3D games in general, but usually when it's a little bit more something like a Spyro or a Crash or something that looks like Bugsnax, it's a little bit easier for me to swallow. The plot definitely surprised me for sure. I was expecting very minimal in terms of plot, but to have something that I haven't really seen since Digimon World 1, where your goal is to bring back these characters to a city and you have to go through all these tasks to convince them to come back to the city. That is the core mechanic of Digimon World 1, and I love that game. And to see it again in a game like this, where you also have to strategize catching cute food bugs, is really, really fun. There's a couple of Bugsnax that I hate, just like trying to figure out how to catch them. I'm talking about Scoopy Banoopy. I'm talking about regular Banoopies. I'm talking about Instabug. I'm talking about you guys. You guys are not fun to catch. But otherwise, I think this game is fun. I think figuring out the different strategies is really interesting. Most of them have more than one way to do it. For example, I'll go back to Scoopy Banoopy. I didn't learn until after I was done with him that you can put the trip shot on some flames and it will cause the whole trip shot to be flame. Instead, what I was doing was lighting myself on fire and running into him to cool him off. And so that's just one example of like how there are multiple ways to catch certain Bugsnax. And I think that's really fun to experiment and use what you've learned in previous areas to try and catch all these different Bugsnax that behave in different ways. Occasionally less intuitive. There are a couple examples where I had to like have someone on stream sort of like tell me what to do or look it up. But in general, I found most of it intuitive to figure out how to catch it at least one way or another. Dialogue's okay. Some of the characters fit a certain character trope. The voice acting that performs some of that dialogue is very impressive. I loved Filbo's voice actor a lot. I think he gave the best performance that I've heard in a video game in a long time. Very high praise for Filbo. Egebert's pretty good. Beffica, also a great voice actress, even though hers is the boxiest of character boxes, I think. Right. Yeah, I had a great time. However, I played this on PS4, and I think that it's not totally optimized for PS4. I don't have a PS4 Pro, so maybe that would help. But you and I sat down last week, and we timed my loading times in between biomes, and we got to like 30 seconds.
Yeah, at least.
That's a really abysmal loading time for a game that doesn't look like it's graphically taxing.
No, this should not tax hardware, even a base PS4 with what it's doing. There are much more complex games, I think, on that system that load in more quickly and just seem like they perform better based on what you've said about your experience.
And I think it loads the whole area. Like there doesn't seem to be like a load distance. Like it loads a biome at a time. But even still, like even the biggest biome doesn't seem that huge. Not totally optimized for the PS4. I don't feel that it's not so bad that I feel the need to do it again on PS5 and see how much better it performs.
Yeah.
But just something that really slowed me down a lot was just like waiting for those load times, especially at a point when I was trying to catch 10 Bugsnax for Triffica or something.
Yeah, there's Triffany and Beffica. But yeah, they might as well be called that in the game, right? Okay, so I agree with a lot of those things you've said. Before I get to my overall thoughts, though, any other concluding thoughts? And if not, what do you score this out of 10?
I'm going to score this an 8.5.
Oh.
I when I wasn't playing it, I would think about it like at certain nights when I was playing it and I couldn't figure out how to catch a Bugsnax, I would like go to bed and I would think about it. And then I would have an epiphany at like 7 p.m. the next day and be like,
no way.
Oh, that's what I need to do.
I love that this game was invading your thoughts when you weren't playing it. I love when games can do that.
That
is super cool.
And, I'm a big time completionist and I was trying to find meaning in a lot of ways to deal with the Bugsnax and how they relate to the Grumpuses.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't find that when I was playing it, but I did afterward. And so I'm looking forward to going back to this game. Even though I have the platinum, I know what I want to do to go that extra mile. And I'm really looking forward to playing Bugsnax again.
That's awesome. Well, it's a game where you could platinum it twice, you could get it on PS5 someday and platinum it there, or, replay it on PS4 or, maybe on PC someday too. So,
do we want to talk about the ending later? Do we want to talk about the ending now, or do we want to talk about the ending at all?
We'll get to the ending because you mentioned that parts of the story were surprising. I want to talk about that too in my overall thoughts, just briefly, and then we can expand on it further. So my overall thoughts on Bugsnax, I think this is deceptively simple on the surface. It ends up having some astounding variety with characters and open-ended puzzle gameplay. I'm going to reference a lot of things you just said in your overall thoughts. Like you said, there are so many ways to approach catching these Bugsnax. A lot of the strategies don't immediately occur to you, nor are they always communicated by the game at all. Sometimes it just takes experimenting. That can be kind of a positive and a negative for me, like the suction cup tool, the trip shot, using that on the fire. That's something the game, I feel like, doesn't really tell you. It might, but there are examples of various tools being used in conjunction with the environment where sometimes it's a joy to figure that out yourself. You think like, well, the launch pad is a springboard, it can launch things up. What if I put it at an angle on this slope? Would that then cause the trajectory to be more, horizontal in nature? And so your brain starts to think about all of the different ways you could not only use each tool differently, but combine them in very interesting ways. And you're going to need to combine them to catch all of these Bugsnax. There are 100 different species. And I just love the variety and how you need to capture them. Things never feel stale. I was worried that, there are all these Bugsnax. A lot of them are kind of like similar in nature. Some of them are kind of just reskins from environment to environment. But there are enough of them that you really don't feel like you're doing the same thing 100, 200 times. You're changing up what you're doing a lot. And the game is periodically introducing new tools and environments and different ways that Bugsnax interact with each other, so that you can catch them in ways. So it's not like you use tool A to catch Bugsnax B. More it's that I'm observing Bugsnax A, which reminds me of Bugsnax B, and I'm in environment C, and there's Bugsnax D over here. And if I lead that Bugsnax over to Bugsnax A and etc., then I think that's how I can catch this Bugsnax. It can get that complicated sometimes. I think that's inherently really interesting. Not all of them are that complicated, The Bugsnax early on in the game are very simple. The game does a great job at easing you into things, introducing you to basic Bugsnax, and then slowly ramping things up until you reach a point where you might need to look up a few Bugsnax because it's a little obtuse figuring out what you need to do. Then along the way, you will encounter these various grumpuses we've talked about. They're scattered all over. They all have their own backstories. You eventually bring them back to town. You interview them. They give you little tastes of their backstories and, why they arrived on the island, why they left the central town of Snacksburg. And each grumpus falls into a personality type that can feel a little cliche, like you've seen these archetypes of characters in other games. But like you said, I really like the voice acting in here. I think, it was always interesting to listen to them talk, even though they fell into these boxes that I recognized from other works of fiction. The grumpuses are cute at first, but they become quite complex, which was really a surprise. They have flaws and conflicts and varying perspectives on how they should be living their lives on this island. Some of them have relationship issues. Some of them have trust issues. There are some who are putting on a show for others. So there was depth there that was really surprising. And just like another of our previously featured games, Night in the Woods, this is where I want to just mention that the ending is very unpredictable and actually kind of sinister in a way that I didn't expect, without giving away too much, because we avoid spoilers here on Underplayed. But that was a game I thought back to as I hit the last act of this game. This is dark. I don't know why, but this is crazy. I didn't totally not dig it though. I appreciated that it was something that I couldn't predict and that I was along for this ride. At the core, you are exploring these different biomes. There are 8 of them. There are 2 that branch off in each cardinal direction from the central town of Snacksburg. And I like the variety of the environments. And while you're in those environments, the act of catching Bugsnax feels good. The game delivers nice reward markers in the form of jingles, and it will recite the names of the creatures back to you as you catch them. Every time you catch a new Bugsnax, it fills part of your notebook. There's this constant feeling of satisfying collecting going on. And I love collecting things in games. And then the biomes are small enough that you get a grasp of where things are pretty quickly. It allows you to focus on the creatures that occupy them, not where you should be going. The focus becomes first and foremost on what are these creatures that you're exploring. So overall, there's more to Bugsnax than meets the eye for many reasons. The environments, the amount of strats you need to catch the Bugsnax, the individual stories of the grumpuses, what's going on with the island itself. It is a gentle-looking game with witty, cartoonish writing. It's great for a lot of ages. It tests your ability to logic through how to catch creatures with different behaviors, although a lot of the solutions are pretty obtuse, and I did need the assistance of a guide. So I was going to give Bugsnax a 7.5, but in hearing you talk about it and in talking about it myself, I think I'm going to go up to an 8 on this. I really liked it. There's some other minor gripes I had with it, like navigation was a little tedious. I also encountered some load times that seemed like they shouldn't be there. But yeah, if you need to go catch a Bugsnax in a biome that's 2 maps away, you have to walk all the way there. And the environments aren't that big, but there were often times where I wanted to just check off a side mission and I would have to walk through a map, load that map up, then load up the next map, which is where the Bugsnax was that I needed. Catch it, maybe only take 30 seconds to catch it, then go back to that first map. That's another load. Then go back to Snacksburg so I could return the snack to a grumpus. Another load screen. So there's no fast travel. So there can be a tedium in doing all of that traversal just to check off these really quick tasks, because ultimately the tasks in here are very manageable. You can knock off a bunch of tasks in a short amount of time. So it constantly feels like you're getting stuff done.
Yeah.
So, which is really great.
Add that, all that tedium that you just mentioned to certain things are time specific too, like time of day specific. And that adds a whole nother level of okay, well, I didn't make it quite in time because of my load time. And so now I have to go to sleep for a couple hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are certain Bugsnax that only show up, at night. There's a select few that only show up when it's raining, which can be annoying if you're looking for those specific ones. And you can sleep to pass the time. And when you're walking around in real time, it's one of those games where the in-game clock is moving at like a minute every second, so in 60 seconds, you've passed an hour. So this game has a lot of things going for it. It is a game that's visually appealing because it has really bright, colorful characters. Bugsnax are kind of a fun idea.
They're so cute.
They're so cute, yeah. But at the same time, I have a tough time figuring out how to classify this game, like what genre this game fits into. In my synopsis up top, I called it a first-person adventure. Some might call it casual, some might not. How do you categorize what's going on here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because it is a first-person adventure. It's also a narrative adventure. It's also whatever the hell Pokemon is. Like, it's a lot of things that work together really well. It's not quite like anything I've played. It's a little bit like a lot of things I've played.
Mm-hmm.
But none of them ever wove them together, and none of them ever did it that well. So, I don't know. I found the most joy in strategizing with Bugsnax and collecting Bugsnax. So that I lean more heavily into that, but I know that a lot of other reviewers really lean heavily into the narrative parts where you're finding all this like really deep character depth and interaction between the Grumpuses and some of the more sinister points of Snaktooth Island. Like, some people really dug that. So it's hard to classify. I think it's just what you find the most joy in might be the best classification for you.
It is good that there are multiple ways to sink into this game and enjoy it. I think I was much more into the story maybe the first 5 hours. I was actually paying attention to how all the characters were interacting very closely. I cared about where, what was going on with Lisbeth. What's her deal? Like, she invited me to this island and now she's not around, and getting that slow drip of information from each Grumpus one at a time as you're convincing them to come back to the central town, that was really interesting to me. As more of them came to the town, I became a little overwhelmed with how many of them were standing around. It's like, okay, wait, you have this relationship with them. Why? Oh yeah, that's because that. And I actually had to go back into my journal and review some of the interviews that I did with them, right? So
I did that too.
With 12 or so characters that you're following, it becomes a lot to remember like that stuff. Not that it's terribly important to get the full experience, but if two characters were having a certain reaction or conversation with each other, I wanted to remember why that was happening. Yeah, I wanted to see more of Lisbeth. At the heart of what's going on is Lisbeth is missing, and her partner Agabel is also missing for much of this game. So you get like little film strips that you can watch from their past. So the game gives you like some hints at what has gone on in the past of these characters' lives, which is fun to uncover. You're getting keys, you're getting film strips, you're getting journal pages that you collect in one part of your inventory screen. So I thought that was a nice little touch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Unless there's anything else, I think that will do for our review of Bugsnax. It's a game we both really liked, it sounds like. And I'm really glad that it lived up to your expectations from what it sounds like. I mean, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Exceeded expectations I didn't have.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah, it definitely was different than a lot of the expectations you had, Disco, and exceeded ones that maybe you didn't even have. So that's really cool. That's our review of Bugsnax. You can play it on PS4, PS5, PC, and Mac. Disco rated it an 8.5. I rated it an 8. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Oni Mochi. My name's Bopo, and you can find me on Twitter at Bopo. That's BO_PO.
And I'm DiscoCola. You can find me at DiscoCola on Twitter, and as long as the PC is working, on Twitch as well.
Next time, we'll have 2 more secret games, and our featured review will cover Hades, a roguelike dungeon crawler developed by Supergiant Games. Until then, everyone, keep on playing.